All right. I think I've got a doozy of a podcast today. And it's funny. We've done a few practice sessions of this podcast already. I got Elizabeth, our producer here, and we've got a guest, Samantha, from our office too today. She deals in communications, but we wanted her to sit in today. So if you hear another voice, it's probably Sam's. And if everyone knows Elizabeth at this point. So I'm starting this podcast off and I'm getting worked up. And in some of the earlier edits, I used the word, I'm getting angry. And you didn't like that very much, did you?
No, I did not.
Well, no, she did. That's a very polite way of going, she's screaming at me, right? She's screaming at me before. Is I get worked up and I get very worked up about these subjects and I find them outrageous. And maybe anger is not the right word, but they certainly don't make me happy. Okay, boss?
Okay.
So, and here's the subject. I'm reading a Chalkbeat article, great article by Matt Barnum, and we'll link to it, right? Yeah, we'll link to it.
Correct.
And the title is Why a New Federal School Choice Program May Require a Massive Marketing Budget. A new federal school choice program. So not really vouchers, but it's a program. So there's a difference here. And I think it's important for public schools, administrators, everybody to understand what's getting ready to happen, okay? Because I don't think that the new federal program and the marketing budget to create this new federal program is the entire story. It's a provocative article. Thanks, Matt. But it's not the picture that I see in my mind's eye, right? My mind's eye, and I'm getting into this more and more everywhere I look, is that I believe that what we are doing right now and have been doing for probably the last 20 years slowly, and it's starting to ramp up right now, is we are building two separate school systems in this country. Two parallel school systems. And I'm going to say it, and this is what's getting me worked up. One for the haves and one for the rest of us. One with accountability. One that has testing, reporting, open meetings, elected board members, civil rights laws. Heavens to Betsy. Civil rights laws. Heavens to Betsy, we have Title VI, Title IX, Title III, heavens to Betsy, we have Americans with Disabilities Act for the students. Heavens to Betsy, we try to educate all the children. Okay, that's one system, right? And literally with boards that you can go yell at on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. You can voice your thoughts and let them know how you feel. And maybe they'll adjust, maybe they won't. And a lot of times we get angry because they don't adjust, but at least we have a voice in a system and there's accountability in tracking. The other one has almost no accountability, no required test in many, many states, no accreditation mandates for teachers, no obligation to tell you where the money went. And what I'm talking about is the difference between a public school system that is funded by taxpayers and a private school system also funded now by the taxpayers. Now, it used to be we had many systems. You had religious schools, you had private schools, you had public schools, but only one was funded by the taxpayers. So that is our public school systems because it's funded by we, the people. Wake up. Wake up. That system is being destroyed every single day. And now we're creating another private school system. Literally, it's an entire parallel private school system, which is growing in every state that I'm monitoring, which is most. It's not all yet, but it's growing in every single state. Texas, Florida, New Jersey, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so, and it's all still funded by taxpayers. Okay, so don't act like we've always had private school systems, Brian. I know somebody said that. Brian, we've always had private school systems. So we've always had two systems not funded by me, not funded without a choice. Now it's not up to the taxpayers. We have two systems. And you're kind of funding both if you're a taxpayer right now. One for the haves, one for the have-nots. I know which one's better. It's right now it is still the one for the have-nots because they're gonna take care of everybody. But I've covered that at length. So let's get into this new program, all right? Because, So let's talk about the mechanics. Because the whole thing depends on people not understanding it, I think. And that's what people are counting on. There's nothing like complexity to wear people out and get them to walk away. If you really don't want to have people ask you a lot of questions, just make a system really complex. It might have been Einstein. I don't know if it was attributed to Einstein or not, but I love this quote. If you can't explain it in a paragraph, you don't understand it either. So if the person communicating to you can't explain it in a paragraph, they don't get it or they don't want you to get it. And believe it or not, this new program takes a lot more than a paragraph, right? Well, I can make it simple. We're funding two systems. And they don't want to explain it to you that way because it paints too clear of a picture on what it is. All right. So I think, is that clicking, Elizabeth? Sam, you're here. Does that click with you?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm outraged. And Elizabeth's over here telling me to tap it down. And because I don't want to start yelling. I really don't, man. But okay. Starting in 2027 in January, a wee 6 months from now. 2027 feels like it's 18 years from now. It is in 6 months, January 1st. An individual taxpayer can donate up to $1,700 to this thing called a scholarship granting organization. Now, this is different than tax credits and vouchers. This is a whole nother school choice program to continue to expand it secretly into the cover of darkness. All right. I mean, that's how I feel. Right. And so a scholarship granting organization, an SGO. SGO, that sounds diabolical to me. Yes, I want you to all think of an SGO as diabolical. That's how I feel. Too much? All right. So in exchange for this donation, the taxpayer gets a dollar for dollar federal tax credit. It's not a deduction, it's a credit, meaning if you owe the IRS 10 grand and you send in $1,700 to an SGO, now you only owe $8,300. So it is a gazillion times. I don't really know what the percentage is. Deductions are nice, but it's not, you don't get, when you pay your taxes, I know another thing, the IRS, make it as confusing as hell so no one can understand it. And you got to pay somebody to tell you what the IRS will already tell you how much you owe. It's a crazy system and it's super complex. Once again, tax code is for the haves and the have-nots, right? Like, okay, interesting parallel. Well, you got another system for the have and the have-nots. All right. That sounds like a community organizer again, I think. All right. So a tax credit means you get a dollar for dollar drop. If you owe $10,000 and you give $1,700, you don't get a deduction, which is like a percentage off of your taxes. You get a dollar for dollar credit. So why in the heck wouldn't you give it to this SGO? Well, I'm going to explain to you why you shouldn't. But man, it sounds great. Instead of giving the money to the federal government, you can give it directly to a nonprofit as a dollar for dollar exchange. Well, that's still taxpayer money. It's just the federal government is taking one step back and you give your federal tax dollars to a nonprofit. So it's still tax dollars. It's still not going into the coffers to help with roads and whatever the heck else the federal government's going to do. And that's another argument for another day, right? So let's be precise on what this means. This is not a charity. Charity costs the giver something. This costs the giver nothing. This is a federal government letting a private individual choose where a slice of public revenue gets spent and then calling it a donation. It's not the same thing as donating to a nonprofit. Okay, now, yes, technically the SGO has to be a 501c3, which is, if you know their IRS codes, 501cs are all these different nonprofits and charity organizations. But it's a 3C3, so it's called a nonprofit. And it has to spend, listen to this, at least 90% of its revenue, of its donations, that's how it gets revenue, on scholarships, which means up to 90%, which means 10% can go to everything else. So that means your donation is taking a haircut, okay? Overhead, salaries, administrations, and hold on to that 10% because we're going to come back to it, okay? Because we're not done with that 10% because that's not where the story ends, right? So immediately now look, I know what somebody's saying. Somebody's saying, well, you give $1,700 to the federal government, that's going to get destroyed too. Yeah, man, but we're not looking to replace an imperfection with another imperfection, are we? I mean, two wrongs, pretty sure don't make a right. I think I heard that somewhere, right? So let's don't fall into the logical fallacy of, well, the other person's wrong too. Yeah, okay, fine, but then let's go fix that. So let's don't create another problem program in the federal government, for Pete's sakes. And so, okay, now states have to opt in. States have to opt into this. And as of the spring 29 governors have said yes or signed on. 29. So it's not like we're talking about 2 or 3 states. Yeah, they're mostly red states for now and a couple of blue ones, but the money's real. And the Trump administration floated $24 billion a year for this program. 24 billion. That's with a B. I can't spell billion, much less calculate how big that number is, right? So the Joint Committee on Taxation scored this program at about $26 billion over 10 years. So that's what they think the program is going to spend. So now you got the 10% haircut for the SGO. Then you got $26 billion of taxpayer money to monitor the program. Now, I don't think that, I'm pretty sure that doesn't educate any children with that money. Let's think about that. Does that money educate a child? No. Okay. That goes to the government doing a $26 billion program. An independent analysis using this 10% participation rate landed around $23.5 billion annually. Pick your estimate. Okay. I got 2 of them for you. It's a lot. Okay. It's a lot of money to monitor a program. Now, I thought that the Trump administration said that the Department of Education was worthless and we need to get rid of it. There was some truth to aspects of it. There's some truth not to that aspects. And I've covered that in a previous podcast. But now they want to create another damn program, another department to monitor another thing. I mean, and I'm not supposed to be angry right now, Elizabeth? Elizabeth, I'm not supposed to be angry?
You're allowed to be angry.
She doesn't like it when I get angry. But I mean, it's just so, it's the hypocrisy of it that gets me cuckoo, right? Okay. Oh my gosh. So it's a lot of money. Okay. Now, here are the facts that anchor everything we're talking about today. The one you will not hear at the rah-rah conferences for this. All right. Just the facts. All right. The federal law places, get ready, almost no requirements on the private schools that take this money. No mandatory testing. I know some states require some different mandatory testing for their voucher programs, but not for this. Not for this, guys. Oh, no. No mandatory testing, no accreditation requirement, no obligation to accept every child who applies. Civil rights rules that bind schools taking direct federal dollars. Nope. You know why? They're not taking direct federal dollars. They're going through a middleman, the SGOs, that shave off 10%, and they also don't have to comply with federal law like this. Right? Like the public schools do. How clever. How diabolical. Breathe, Brian. Breathe. All right. So school choice advocates, and look, school choice advocates come in a lot of different buckets. I'm a school choice advocate, I think. If it's done fairly, we have equal rules, the same rules. I've covered this endlessly. I'm not cool with school choice as it's defined now because it's garbage and the rules are not the same. And I've covered that at length, and I'm going to move on. But the school choice advocates argue that all these rules shouldn't apply, even though these scholarships are, in their words, 100% federally subsidized. That feels like the government's involved, but the government's not involved. But the government is all over every public school. I mean, public schools have so much bureaucracy piled in on them that they have to do or else. Even bad rules, good rules. I mean, some of the laws are great, but some of the bureaucracy is crazy. I mean, public schools have to hire tons of administrators just to comply with all the federal and state rules. That doesn't educate a lot of kids, but it gives you a lot of accountability. We were talking about that in the office today. What reports are needed? What reports aren't needed? Bureaucrats want gazillion reports that they can't eat and they can't digest because it makes them feel good to know everything. And you need some level of controls. That's what management's about. Management's about having controls, and I get that. But leadership is about knowing what rules and what reports need to be liquidated. That's what a leader has to do. And a manager wants a gazillion reports, and that's good. You want those. But a leader has to instruct that manager to reduce bureaucracy. And sometimes you get a leader manager. They're the best. I like to think that I occasionally fall in the leader manager bucket. I'm not a great manager anymore. I'm just details. But you need some controls, and a good leader should go, oh my gosh, I now have too many rules. I now have too many reports, and I can't really do the main job. I thought the main job was educating the babies. thought that the main job of education was educating the children. I mean, I think that sounds insane now, because nothing we're doing right now is about educating the children. It's about bureaucracy and controls, or the lack of controls in the other system, too much controls in one system. And we're not focused on educating the babies, because if we were focused on educating the kids, we'd have whatever rule we thought was best for both. Wouldn't we? I mean, if testing's awesome, why don't we require everybody to test? I mean, why the difference? Because we're not focused on educating the kids. We're focused on getting votes and getting reelected. That's what we're focused on right now. Okay. Did I say it? Did I say the truth? All right. Ooh, I just got to slow down. I just got to slow down from Elizabeth again. I think she's been worried about this episode ever since I fired this article off to her. She knew I was going to get fired up on that plane. And so I was on a plane and I was reading this article. I think I was just pounding out emails about this. Okay. And so thanks, Matt. I appreciate you covering this story, man. I wasn't paying attention to it either. We should send Matt a little thank you note. All right. So let's sit with this architecture a little bit. A public school district takes federal money and inherits filing cabinets worth of accountability, right? A private school takes the same federal money, launched through an SGO. I love how diabolical SGO sounds. It through an SGO and rebranded as a donation and inherits almost no bureaucracy. That is not a loophole. That's the design. That's the intent. The converted tax credit structure exists specifically so that this money doesn't count as government funding. So the rules, they don't have to follow it. They choose complexity on purpose, because complexity is what buys you freedom from accountability. Some things need to be more complex, man. And if it's educating the kids so that I can have a good old man's life and have young people to do work and work in my car and clean my teeth and all the things that we want in this society, little accountability is good. But apparently this other system, this special system, we don't care about accountability for that, because those people are special. I think they're more special. No, they're not. No, they're not. I can't stand it. Okay. I'm done with that portion. Okay, let's get to this. I want to talk about this confession, this $300 confession in Matt Burnham's article. And this, he got this out of them. He goes, it could take $300, to get all the donations they need to fill these SGOs up. Okay, so remember, $300 is what they said. So here's the number that got the choice world really buzzing. The staff at the American Federation for Children, this is the group that Betsy DeVos co-founded. It's important to know the beginnings of something so you can understand we call it the legislative history in law. You want to know kind of how things get created. So it's Betty DeVos, pro or con. She's the one that co-founded this, and they have estimated that it could cost $300 or more in marketing to convince one taxpayer to make one donation. So it's $1,700 minus $300, and $300 of that $1,700 goes to marketing to get them to donate money. Well, that's not an uncommon thing for nonprofits. We have St. Jude in Memphis, fantastic. If you're thinking about a tax deductible donation, I would encourage you to donate to St. Jude, help the kids, right? And so they have to spend money to get donations. So that's cool. But remember who's paying for it. The taxpayers are. Okay. So now the reporting frames this as a scaling problem, and it's expensive to grow. And so let's just do the math at the national level, because I think it's a little staggering. If you're trying to hit 14 million donors, fraction of the 300 million or so that live in the United States, $300 a head runs you over $4 billion in marketing. $4 billion in marketing. I might be in the wrong business. Maybe I need to become a marketing company for these SGOs. But I hate them. I'm sorry. They make me feel icky and gross. But boy, that's a lot of money. $4 billion in marketing. This is roughly twice what the entire state of Wyoming spends on its public schools. Twice as much as, in Texas, I think they spend about $100 million. $4 billion. Texas is a big state, more than Wyoming. And this is just to convince people to move money they already owed to the SGOs. And the debate in the world is it 300? Is it 100? Can we get it down over time? That's what people want to talk about. Wrong debate. Wrong debate. Don't be a sucker. Don't fall for their tricks. Don't fall for their traps where they're trying to distract you over here. It reminds me of gladiator games. So Sam, do you know why Rome had gladiator games?
No.
To distract the mob. If they're in the arena, they're not worried about what happens on the Senate floor. I think that the statement was something like, I can't remember what the statement was. I can't remember. Right now I'm so just bundled. But one of the Caesars, one of the big guys, said, if you can distract them with the dirt of the arena, they'll never worry about the marble of the Senate. Something like that. And so, yeah, that's what it is. So don't get distracted, okay? Because let's talk about the real debate. And I don't really care if it's $300 or $30. It doesn't matter. The number is big, and it scales, and it's huge. And what is it that the entire pipeline is a series of people getting paid before one child learns anything? Okay, so here's haircut one. You ready for all the haircuts? Do you know what I mean by haircuts? Is that a term that you kids use, haircuts?
No.
Haircut is you got somebody and you take a little shave off the top. Like you're getting a haircut, take a little shave off the top. And everybody's got to get, it's like a middleman, right? So if a middleman sells this red pen here, right? So a manufacturer makes the red pen and the pen costs 50 cents. Well, I have to add some money to it to sell it to make a profit. So I keep taking a haircut. I just keep shaving off. Everyone's got to get paid. Everyone that touches this pen going from production to hands is paid something. So you're taking a haircut, or it's costing somebody a little bit more every single time, right? So you gave a $1,700 donation, and haircut means what's the end user supposed to be for the $1,700? The kid. It's supposed to go to educate the child. But that $1,700 keeps getting reduced through little haircuts so that the actual user gets much less in actual value than the $1,700. And there's a rule in donating to nonprofits. And you should ask this if you're ever thinking about donating. How much of my donation goes to overhead, administrative functions? If it's more than 10%, nope, don't do it. There was a lot of scandals. I don't know if it's true, but 10, 15, 20 years ago, I'm getting old, is you found out that really big nonprofits were taking like 30% for admin, 40% for admin. And I don't want to talk about who, you can go research that, but it was massive scandals, like organizations you would know nationally. And you figure out that 40% of their overall budget's funding staff instead of actually like delivering things to the needy. Doesn't that upset you? 10% is fair. You're going to have to pay something for the people managing. I mean, 10% is fair. I mean, even 12, 13% if it's a really good cause, maybe, and it's difficult to administer, that makes sense. But over 15, you got a lot of waste. Okay, so let's talk about how this taxpayer money is being cut before it gets to the end user, right? So that's what a haircut is. All right, so haircut one, they spend money. The tax advantaged money, and in many cases, separately raise money on marketing, right? So let me see if I can make this a little simpler. So $1,700, 10% of it right off the top goes to administrative functions. 10%, right? Then the dollars arrive at the SGO. The SGO is legally allowed to keep up to 10% for administration. So we just talked about that. So off the top of your $1,700, up to $170 can go to running the organization, salaries, office, people like that. That's kind of normal. That's okay. Like, I get it. The next one, though, is what flows to the schools and providers. Because remember, now it's got to go to a school. This school has administrative functions too, right? Tutoring companies, therapy vendors, private schools themselves, more hands, more overhead, more people. But you know what the law doesn't require? The private schools to only use 10% of that money for administrative functions. So how much money can the private schools or their tutoring organization or whatever cut before it gets to the child? Could they do 50%? Well, who knows? Because we don't ever see the books, man. We don't ever know. They never tell us. So at minimum, even best case scenario, you get a 10% haircut off the first one. Then when it hits a private school, you get a 10% haircut for their administrative functions. So you've already cut it by $340, right? So you've already cut it by 20%. But that's best case. Literally best case. And then the other haircut is a secret $24 billion government tax bill to just monitor the organization. And you don't even see that, by the way. Like, it's not even a part of the $1,700. But trust me, if you thought $1,700 was going to the kids, it's not. It's less than that, plus another $24 billion, give or take, in government federal oversight, and I have yet to see the federal government educate a child. Not one. I mean, I get that that's kind of my rub with the Department of Education, right? Department of Education on a federal level is interesting. They give really good data and really good programs and put some money behind those programs. It can be really cool, but often they have like unfunded mandates and they don't do a great job reporting back all the details and science and programs to kind of make the nation more systemized. Like that's the whole idea of like, you learn a really great program in Wyoming and you want to share that with Texas. Like that's a cool idea, but bureaucracy and below, you get a waste. But now we have this whole other group that's taking your taxpayer dollars. So there's another haircut, okay? So by the time the dollars actually reaches anything resembling a classroom, it's been to the barbershop, what, 3-4 times? I mean, why aren't we talking about that? Why aren't we talking about the massive cuts? And so that $300 number is really telling to me because it's not a scaling challenge. It's just a receipt. It's the movement admitting out loud in its own internal estimates that a huge share of this education money is going to be spent on everything except education, on persuasion, on administration, on the machinery of moving money around, on federal government oversight. And I want to be fair because I try to be. The advocates have an answer for this. One of them said, and I'm paraphrasing very closely here, is that I wrote this down. We don't look at this as wasted money. It's part of a larger effort to challenge the culture around education in this country. That sounds kind of good. I mean, it's kind of corporate rhetoric, in my opinion. We don't look at this as wasted money. No, because you're probably getting a piece of it. It ain't wasted money if I get to buy a new car with it, is it? It ain't wasted, dude. It feels pretty good, right? So it's part of a larger effort to change the culture around education. No, it's not. It's part of a larger effort to create a separate parallel system for the haves and the have-nots. That's what it's about. And they won't just say it. And if they don't recognize that it's doing, let them sit down with me. I'll educate them. I really will too. And so, this is not an education argument. This is a marketing argument. All right. And I'm in the communications, marketing, advertising space, man. I mean, we recruit tens of thousands of students back to public schools. And yeah, they got to pay for it. But there's no waste. And you want to prove that there's no waste? There's no waste because we only do performance contracts. If the student shows up and arrives in the school districts, then we get paid. And yes, that's one haircut. One. But they also get more students and they're adding to their budget. So that's money they would have never gotten anyway. They would have never gotten that new money student if we didn't recruit them. So I'd rather not be even doing this job. I hate to say it. I know it makes me, but we shouldn't have to recruit to a public good. But the issue is this. They're sitting here doing all these programs to take money away from public schools. And then when a public school attempts to advocate for themselves and spend a nickel to say, hey, look what a good job we're doing, people lose their minds. And at some point, the public school needed okay, let me say this again. At some point, the public school leadership needs to step up and tell people to back off. I'm going to say it again. At some point, public school leadership needs to say, if it's okay for private schools to use tax dollars to tell people how great they are and to advocate themselves, so will public schools. Not should, but will. You have a mandate now. You have to, because you've got two parallel systems. And I believe the public schools have the best system, and they need to get out there and tell people about this. And then they start to tell people how great they are, and then people go, you should be using taxpayer dollars. Well, what about this SGO? They are using money for education, and they are not an education unit. And you have the federal government now monitoring that program. You talk about waste. Isn't that a bigger problem? Isn't that less money going to the babies? Okay, I don't say this to be cruel. I said it because they started it. All right? They started this. If you want to build a system that is unfair, unequal in rules, and you want to hinder one from competing and advocating for themselves, I'm going to speak up and say something to you. And I hope it opens your eyes up a little bit, because I hope that together we can find some joint resolution to improve all school types, every one of them. I mean, that's the goal of school choice. This isn't it. This is a travesty of nature. All right. Is it a travesty of nature? Is that the right way to say it? I think it's, yes, it is a travesty of the government. There. Okay. That's a better way. Okay. So here's where I need to kind of like turn the camera around, because it would be easy, cheap to say the whole spend is worthless. Here's the uncomfortable part. All right. Public districts complain to this too. And the law lets SGO money fund tutoring, after-school programs, supplemental services for public school children. And I'm already watching districts and their allies as they start to navigate how to get their hands on this pot of money, right? And I understand the pull. There's maybe billions of dollars on the table, and your budgets are bleeding right now because you're losing student potentially. And of course you want a piece of it. And I think you deserve a piece of it. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you to leave the money on the table at a principle. I want to win. Like, I'm going to call out hypocrisy, but I'm just going to tell you this. I want you to hear it as a friend, and it's not a scold. You got to do what you got to do to win. But do not go spending $300 a head to raise the money. Do not stand up an awareness campaign because a vendor told you that's how you scale, right? Don't fall in love with activity. And let me see if I can make this simpler, because this starts, once again, I'm trying to avoid that complexity, right? It's better just to recruit students directly. Get your $14,135 national average per student, some less, some more. Advocate for fixing the funding model. Advocate for shutting this down. But if you want to go get this SGO, go get it. I mean, it's a shame, but I'd rather go to public schools than some organization with zero accountability. And so I'm gonna kind of wrap it up now, because I'm trying not to get more worked up, Elizabeth. All right. So this tax credit is law. It starts in 2027. The money is coming, and the campaigns are already being written. They're already being started in some states. So the question in front of every public school leader listening isn't, should we get some of this? The question is, if we do, will we spend it like the people who have to answer for it, or like people who just found free money? Because the kids can tell the difference. Eventually, everybody's going to. So I'm going to encourage you to go get this money, but spend it directly as much as possible on educating the children, and be better than the competition, because I think you are. All right. I'm Brian Stevens, and thanks for listening. Bye.